Good morning. This is a data set that's called the International Vehicle Sales Data Set. It's a real life data set of an auto reseller that sells across the world. And this data comes from, I think around about 2003 into 2005, broken into the following: country, territory. NA is North America, EMEA is Europe, Middle East and Africa, APAC is the Asia Pacific countries. Now, you also have these different product lines, and once of course if you do an advanced filter, you see that you've got classic cars, motorcycles, planes, ships, trains, trucks and buses and vintage cars that are all for sale. Now, the years, as we mentioned, 2003, 2004 and 2005, you have different quantities that they end up selling for each different product to different countries in different years, and there's a discount given to different areas and different countries. There are ancillary expenses, which could be a variety of different things, from logistics costs and other hidden costs, shadow costs, sales prices, and then sales revenues. Now, as we move forward, we want to create a dashboard using Power BI that would look something similar to, let's say, this. So it would look somewhat similar to this. So you'll say we've created a dashboard where we know that these are the different territories and the average of the sales revenues, average of discounts by territory and the year, and then we can choose all of these things, and then average of sales revenue by territory, and that's a pie chart. So that's a ribbon, that's a bar or a histogram, a pie, and then there is average of sales revenue by sales prices and territory, and gives you a sense. So you've got these different areas and different setups. So we'll try and recreate that. So in order to do this, let's start off by typing app.powerbi.com. Now, I'm already signed in. If you aren't signed in, it'll take you into a login page, and if you sign in with your university credentials, you should be able to have direct access to Office 365, which therefore would give you access to Power BI. Now, mind you, this is Power BI on the web, and that's why it's app.powerbi.com. So we're running it as a service on the cloud. If you have a Windows computer, you can also get access to something called Power BI Desktop, but it's a Mac, and therefore will work with what we have. So what we will say is we want to start a new report. So we have two options. The first is we can pick a published dataset. If it's already in your SharePoint or in your Office folders or whatever it is, or some drive that's linked to it, you can always pull that and run your own reports. Or you can paste and manually enter the data. So that's what we will try and do. So we'll click on paste and enter data. Now, where do we have our data? We have our data in Microsoft Excel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and copy this whole data set. On a Mac, I say Command, Shift, and press the bottom arrow, and it selects everything right up to the end. And as you can see, we have 2,823 observations, or specific sales observations, and we will say Control C to copy it. We return to the cloud app, the Power BI set. Click on column 1 because first we selected everything including the header, and we will say Control V. And all we've done is basically just copied and pasted it. And mind you, it says use first row as headers, so it knows that the first row is headers. Now, taking a step back, it's nothing but as if Microsoft's realized that why not leverage the pivot table and pivot chart approach that we already had in Microsoft Excel and move it into the cloud. And then we can say auto create report, but we could say, all right, we could auto create a report, but let's create a blank report. And let's name it as int or international auto sales. And you could call it vehicle sales, but I already have something like that, so I'm not going to try and recreate it. And then I'll say, all right, so that's done, and create a blank report. And what it's doing is pushing everything into the cloud, doing some basic analytics, arranging or structuring the data. This is known as an ETL procedure, extract, transform, load. And now that it's loaded, let's take a pause and look at what we have. So under fields, you will see that all the data, all the column headers have been loaded. Ancillary expenses, country, discount, product line, quantity ordered, sales price, sales revenue, territory, and year ID. Anytime you see the large sigma beside that, basically means these are all numerical data. So it automatically figures out what's a numerical data versus what's a non-numerical. Could be categorical data, could be nominal data, very much like territory. You can't really assign a value to territories or to a product line or to a country. So anytime it's nominal, it keeps it as a non-numerical data. So let's suppose that the company, your organization, wants you to give them a bit of a visualized snapshot or create a visualization dashboard for all various types of product sales related to different territories and countries. So we will look at, let's call this, I've double clicked on page 1 to rename it, geographical dashboard. So we're calling it geographical dashboard, and now you see it says geographical dashboard. I should spell it properly, I suppose, and geographical dashboard. Now, once we have it, so we know that if it's a geographical dashboard, your x-axis, your horizontal axis, should typically contain information related to geography. And the only two pieces that you have related to geography are territory, right, which would be the region, and country. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So let's suppose the first one, so what we do is we just click on where we want to visualize our data. So, and then of course we start off there. So we first say, let's look at it. Let's suppose we want to create general clustered column chart. What should go in the column? See, it asks you, where is your x-axis? Now, what is your x-axis? So we know x-axis, because it's geography, it should be related to territory, right? Or country. We could choose either. So let's say we've got territory. What's your y-axis? Suppose we want to look at, how much did we sell in each territory? So we say y-axis is that. Now it immediately plots it out for you and says, right, that's interesting. This is what our sales revenue has been by territory over time. And of course, you can see that the company sold the most in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, followed by North America, followed by Asia Pacific countries, and then followed by Japan. Now, if you then wanted to know, I also wanted to figure out how it would possibly change by year, right? Every year it might change. So I could add a legend out there, which would be a year IT. So the legend basically allows you to split your data into different sets. And now, as you can see, you've got this three different colors, a very dark purplish blue, like a midnight blue, an orange, and a general blue. And you see that, all right, this is North America in 2004. We sold 67.56 million dollars worth of vehicles. In 2003, we sold 50.866, and then 2005 we sold 28.075, or nearly 076. So you could immediately splice it. So anytime you want to splice the data, you could splice it based on your specific year ID. Just make sure that you're not splicing it too thinly. So have it based on things such as country types or territory types or something like that. Now, as we work on this, we might think that, when somebody is looking at that dashboard, they might also want to look at things separately by, let's say, by the product line, right? So we will say we could create a filter on all pages, which means on every page that they are on, or on this page, everything can be sorted by product line. So we could say, all right, let's create a filter based on product line. So you could allow them to drill down by territory, but also by specific product lines. Now you can also create the same filter on all pages, but that's totally up to you. Now let's move to the next one. In order to move to the next one, what you do is click on the blank piece. And then let's now say we also wanted to see how, let's suppose, by territory. So let's create a ribbon chart this time, and let's move the ribbon chart right out there. And let's stretch it out. Let's see what happens. And we suppose we want to know, so because it's a ribbon chart, it basically is nothing but a smoothed out, solid color based line graph. And x-axis, suppose we call x-axis country. And then we want to say, interesting, we want to see how much discounts we offer by different countries. Right. Now we might also want to see our sales prices by the country itself. So you could immediately see that, all right, this is how it typically looks like. If you look at how much discounts you offer, so here we've got the sum of discounts. We'll say average discounts, and we'll say average sales price. So that gives you a sense that, all right, it's interesting. There are certain countries where you offer certain amounts of discounts. So let's take off your discount set. Where do you offer the most amount of discounts? We see that, all right, because discounts are all in negative terms. Belgium, the average amount of discount is 13.57%, versus Switzerland, you have to offer way larger discounts of 28.06. So you could play around with it any way you want to. Now, if we go back to what we had, and if we click on that, And we would see that what we did there was we wanted to look at by the territory and the average of discount by the year. So we could rehash it. So instead of country or average of discounts, but we wanted to add a legend which is by every year. Now it does make it very busy, but it also tells you something very interesting. It tells you, in 2005, if you look at Canada, you offered 4% discount. This is one of the greater discounts rate. Similarly, Denmark in 2005, you offered 41.33% discount, which tells you that, well, 2005 seems to have been a year where you tended to offer a lot more discounts than you typically did. Similarly, in Austria, you had to offer 24.57% discount. So you can play around with it in order to gain some interesting bits of clarity or insights into what you're visualizing. And that gives you a sense that, oh, right, interesting, what was so special that was going on in 2005 that prompted us to offer so many different types of discounts. Now, let's go back to the next one and let's look at this one. This is average of sales revenue by territory, right? So we want to look at average of sales revenue by territory, which we had done out here. So now we had average of sales revenue by territory and year. This one will just create a pie chart. So once again, click on the blank part and we say, we want to create a pie chart where we want to look at sales revenue by, and they're saying what's the legend, so we will say by territory, right? And we'll say, okay, this was the sales revenue that we end up producing in terms of, instead of sum, we'll say average, and that makes it much better. Similarly, we should say average out there too, which makes it much, much better, right? So instead of sum, because you could also use sum to see the total, but let's look at the average. Now, finally, the fourth one that we're embarking on is we wanted to look up at the average of sales revenue by sales prices and territory. Now, in order to do that, you have to then figure out, okay, how do we want to manage this? So we want to look at, as sales prices increase, how much do our sales prices matter in terms of sales revenue, which basically means, should we increase our sales prices or should we keep them the same? Because if we change our prices, will that impact how much money we're making? So in order to do that, let's start off. So we're saying, again, click on the blank part, and we say, we want to look at sales revenue and we want to look at sales price. Now, we know that sales price should be a part of our x-axis, and it gives you a general sense. Now, suppose we could choose any kind of data. Let's say you selected, area chart. So we create an area chart out here. So this is overall, and let's now again go back to average, and because your sales prices, you see that, this seems to be a very interesting piece of the puzzle where there's a sudden jump, even though prices went up, but then it might be specific to certain types of products. But then, of course, you might say that, there seems to be a deeper distribution of sales revenue when the prices seem to coalesce round about if we were to blow it up a bit, around the, let's say, around the 9,160 mark, right? So you see the deepest concentration, which basically means that you're selling the most when your prices seem to be right up to this point, which is about 7,500, and then your sales typically tends to drop. And of course, there are certain things that sell at a very high price, but typically, if you wanted to really get some serious sales done, keep your price set under that, which means try and sell items that are priced between $482 and about $7,500. And that seems to draw the most number of sales. But we also, suppose, want to know how that would differ based on, let's say, the territory. So what we will do is, there's a new thing out here called, there's an interesting thing called small multiples. So all it does is, it's rather than splitting it like a legend, which you could have added, it splits it into 4 different charts. And then we will say by territory as small multiples. And the minute we do that, what we find is it shows you how by territory itself your sales price to sales revenue correlation seems to work. And you see that, oh, that's very interesting. APAC seems to a certain degree, reach a nice high level of correlation, around 6,454. Japan around 6,200. Europe, Middle East, and Africa around 7,700, and North America is slightly higher at around about 8,400. Now, if I haven't mentioned it properly, what I'm looking at is where the densities, the dark blue and the light blue densities are the most, right? So here you've got a lot of the light blue, which means you're selling things, but you're not selling much, right? So that gives you a decent sense. Now, this gives you, if you go to reading view, so we will save it, and let's call the report International Auto Sales, and save it. Once it's saved it, then what we can do is, because we created the filter on this page by product line, if we change it, see, and right now we've selected everything. Now let's unselect everything and just say, how does it work? Can we create a dashboard just for classic cars so we can split it by different types of products? So just by classic cars, you see, things have dramatically changed. Similarly, just for motorcycles, how does it change? Just for planes, how does it change? Just for ships. So if we wanted to say, all right, we just want to look at vintage cars, and we immediately see that, vintage cars, interesting. North America seems to be a fantastic market for vintage cars, but the best sales price around 2005 seemed to be around the $6,267 mark. In Europe, it's not, you don't get that much revenue, but the average pricing is higher. Japan, on the other hand, does not seem to be a huge market for vintage cars, and Asia Pacific, you seem to sort of peter out around the $5,592 mark. So this gives you a chance to filter. So hope that was useful. I'll post something for you to do as an exercise, and until then, thank you and goodbye.